Good morning, and thank you, audience, for supporting the undocumented community, for coming here in solidarity in an attempt to better understand the undocumented community, to show solidarity. We're going to be having information provided by my colleague, Dr. Pamela Wright, a professor of sociology at Mount San Jacinto College. Providing some facts and data about migration, the undocumented population. We're going to be providing a video as well titled Growing Up Undocumented in America. We are also going to be asking questions to two of the participants, one who is a former student at Mount San Jacinto, and the other, student number 2, who is a current student. And for safety purposes, chooses to, enclose her identity, and we respect that in solidarity. But this whole attempt is to learn, to support, and grow as an institution on how to best serve our undocumented population. So with that, let me share my screen, and I'll allow my colleague, Dr. Pamela Wright, to introduce herself and also start with her presentation here. Give me 1 second. Okay, Pamela, and I can change screens as you tell me to. Let me put it on slideshow. Okay, so you tell me when to change slides.
Yeah, my name is Dr. Pam Ray, and I just want to let all of our undocumented students know that I love you, I support you, and I'm going to give just a very brief overview of information about immigrants and undocumented folks within the United States. So if you could go to the next slide, please. Okay, so this slide is showing a little information about immigrants and refugees. And so within the United States, we actually have a very large number of folks who were born abroad. So within the United States, it's about 44.8 million. This number is from 2018 of foreign-born folk who live in the United States, and that's a lot. And so, as you can see in the little pie chart to the left, it's showing you out of the folks who were born in another country, that we can see that almost a quarter of them are undocumented immigrants. So, and then just to show, this is slightly different information, but on the right, we see that more than half of refugees within the United States, a lot of immigrants and also some undocumented immigrants are refugees. So more than half came from the Congo and also from Burma. And you can see the other countries as well. Next slide, please. Okay, so this map is showing you basically the top 20 metropolitan areas with the largest number of immigrants. And it's interesting to see where the largest numbers of immigrants kind of come. And frankly, they're areas that it makes sense. These are all places that it seems that folks would want to be. But if we look at California, we see that we have a few different metropolitan areas, including Los Angeles, San Diego, and Riverside. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, so this is providing us with a little information about undocumented residents in California. And so it's basically telling us that 1 in 13 Californians is an undocumented resident. We have many undocumented residents in our K through 12 school system. And I just want, I know it's probably hard to see this pie chart, but it's basically showing you that our undocumented immigrants come from all around the world. And so the largest percentage is from Mexico. And again, this is from California. Interestingly enough, with the United States as a whole, Mexico is also where the largest amount of our undocumented immigrants come from. But we see other countries represented as well. Like you can see El Salvador, I'm not going to name them all, but El Salvador, Philippines, India, China, South Korea, and then within other, we have many, but including a lot of African countries. And we can also see here that that there are 240,000 DACA students. And so this is just some general information about how many folks we see within, within California. So next slide, please. Okay, so this slide is showing some legislation that impacts immigrant students. And so on the left, we have federal legislation, and on the right, we have California legislation. So on the left, Plyer versus Doe, this is a Supreme Court decision that guarantees that undocumented students can have free access to K through 12 education, okay? Underneath that, we have DACA, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, where basically our undocumented immigrant students can kind of have almost a suspension of this 2-year, a 2-year suspension of like the possibility of deportation if they qualify and came to the US as children. Under that, there is the federal version of the DREAM Act. This has not yet passed, but I want to jump over to the California side. And in California, we do have the DREAM Act. And basically, it allows students who were not born in the United States to also apply for state-funded financial aid, which is really important. This expands on AB 540. So above that, we see AB 540, Assembly Bill 540, and it allows it allows qualifying non-resident students to pay in-state tuition at public universities. Now, I want to mention something that I found interesting about AB 540 and the students. So when I was working on my dissertation is on it's a quantitative study, and I used a couple of regression analyses, and it was looking at which factors contribute to student success in online community college courses and also face-to-face community college courses. And so in doing so, I had a number of variables that are commonly collected in institutional research offices. And so, I ran a few different models to see what was happening. And what was very interesting, and this is, my dissertation is pre the DREAM Act. So this is before the DREAM Act actually came into being. But I found that our AB 540 students were more likely to be successful and more likely to receive higher grades than our domestically born students. So it's very interesting to see that the AB 540 students were doing better than those who were born in the United States. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, so here I just wanted to mention, sometimes folks have, there are several myths about undocumented students, and one is that they're not contributing to the economy. Of course, they're contributing to the economy, and so these are a few ways. There are other ways as well, but they contribute to job creation. We have undocumented immigrants who are entrepreneurs who create jobs, and then they hire folks. So they may hire American citizens, they may hire other undocumented folk, but they create jobs. They also pay taxes, and so the taxes that they pay income tax, but also sales tax. Also, when they purchase homes, then we have property tax, etc. Hey, property tax helps to fund our public schools. And so our undocumented immigrant population, like I said, pays a number of different taxes, but also they're helping to fund our schools. Okay, so DACA recipients will contribute about $460 billion to the US economy in the next decade. And then also, another way that they contribute to the economy is that we find that immigrant students show significant upward mobility. So, they may start in one socioeconomic class, but they're able to, through education and through, experiences and such, and possibly entrepreneurship and et cetera, they're able to move up on our socioeconomic ladder within the United States. The other thing is that immigrants are less likely to commit crimes than native-born Americans, which is very interesting information. There are statistics citing this and showing that, for example, the sanctuary cities have lower crime rates, but even outside of sanctuary cities, we find less crime within the immigrant communities than communities of native-born Americans. And this impacts our economy as well, because we don't want to have, crime within our cities, and we don't want to have to spend funds in order to, detain and arrest folks and stuff. So, so this is important as well. Next slide, please. So here, I just want us to use our imagination for a moment, because I had to throw some history in here. You've met me. So imagine a country where maybe there was something different that went on in history. So what I'm showing you is information related to the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. So in case some of you aren't aware of what the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo is, basically it ended the US-Mexican War. And what happened is that Mexico agreed to cede part of its territory according to this treaty, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. So you can see the map on the left. This green area is Mexico, was Mexico. Yeah, it was Mexico. So all that green area was Mexico prior to the 1848 and the treaty. So if you look on the right, you can see it's just showing a subsection of areas that were included in this treaty. And although you can see the map, I just want to kind of call out which states are impacted. So within the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, Mexico ceded some of the territory. It was over 1 million square miles and included what is now California, New Mexico, Nevada, parts of Colorado, Arizona, and Utah. And the treaty promised to protect the land and the culture of Mexican people who were living in that land. And the treaty also said that Mexican folk, because remember this was indeed Mexico, who are living in this land area, if they decide to stay there and kind of pledge their allegiance and wait to America, that they can then become American citizens. So they don't have to move their, this is what the treaty is suggesting, that they can stay there, pledge American allegiance and be American cities, American citizens, and keep their property. Unfortunately, the US did not keep our part of the deal. And so we have many Mexican people who decided, yes, I do want to be I do want to stay here, retain my property, and be an American citizen, have the right to vote, etc. But like I said, the US did not keep up their end of the treaty. So many were not granted citizenship. And as a matter of fact, they even lost their land. And so land was taken away, and they were forced to try to fight back for their land in courts, but these were US courts. Were conducted in English. And so many folks lost their land. And then also without the citizenship that was promised, they also didn't have a right to vote. And so, you know, this is something that I think is very important, because if we think about how our society looks today and the issues that, you know, we see where, you know, there's a highly politicized idea between whether we should have undocumented immigrants in our country or not. Well, imagine a country where the US kept its promises in the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. In that case, we would have had many more formerly Mexican citizens who had land, the ability to vote. And this is from 1848, land, the ability to vote. And also they would have been able to pass their land down generation to generation. And so it would be a very different look to our country. And we might not have some of the same controversies if that had indeed happened. So if you could go to the next slide, please. I forgot one thing. I wanted to mention why I was talking about the treaty and why I was talking about Mexico. And it's basically because of this, you know, undocumented immigrants come from many, many, many different countries, but within the US and specifically within California, and then frankly within Southern California, we tend to see more Mexican undocumented immigrants, and they're often treated as scapegoats. But we need to remember that this was indeed Mexico. You know, we should think a little bit more deeply about, you know, our immigrant friends who have come from Mexico to the US for a better life. And then my final slide is just a reminder that we are a nation of Indigenous people and immigrants, and the immigrants within our nation are documented and undocumented. They are voluntary immigrants and involuntary immigrants. And the fact that we do have folks from so many different places and such great diversity is part of what makes us a very great nation. And I feel like we need all these different folks within our country in order to have new ideas and to help our economy and to just basically make us a better place. So thank you, Gerardo. Now I'm done.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wright, for this great information. And I love the fact that you illustrated that our, you know, AB 540 or our, you know, undocumented students tend to do, you know, have the higher grades or work hard. That resilience, you know, to achieve, to improve their, you know, their education. And many times, as I worked as a counselor with students, you know, I've had to use this phrase, you know, at times, maybe your plans may change, but never your dreams, never your academical goals. So, and our students embrace that, and they, you know, with tenacity and strength, they seek their dreams, they seek to be professionals and help, you know, help out the community, help out their families. So with that in mind, I wanted to show a brief video that illustrates growing undocumented in America. And then following that, we will start our questions with our panelists. So let me share. Please let me know if...
Until I got to high school.
When people are getting ready to get their driving permit.
Yeah, we can't see the video.
All my friends were
see
getting...
the video. Let me reshare. Okay.
I didn't realize what undocumented or being undocumented meant until I got to high school.
When people are getting ready to get their driving permit or also apply to college.
All my friends were getting jobs.
But I couldn't because I didn't have a social security number.
Something that I realized very young was that getting pulled over means a lot more when you're undocumented because it could have much more serious consequences.
It can mean separation from your family.
We've heard of people that a ticket can lead to deportation.
When my friend ran over a stop sign and the police pull us over, I would just text everybody I know that like, okay, I'm on this intersection, and then if I don't text you back in 10 or 20 minutes, call, these nonprofit organizations.
If you're out and you're in the car and you see the police, you automatically become struck with fear because you just want to be okay.
One of the hardest parts is knowing that nothing is guaranteed. You don't know if you'll come home and your parents will be there, or if you'll make it home that day.
When you leave the house and you leave your parents or your siblings, you don't know if that will be the last time that you saw them. You don't know if when you come back home, they'll be there. So you don't know if that last goodbye you shared with your family, be it your mom, your brother, your sister, your cousin, is the last goodbye that you shared. You're away, you're at the grocery store, you're at school, and you may not be able to come back, or when you do come back, your parents might not be there. The fear and the anxiety is something that you learn and you try to deal with from a very young age.
And then there's when you graduate high school and you've worked your butt off to be able to get that 4.0 GPA.
To get you that scholarship, that financial aid, and once you apply, you realize that
You might have to withdraw because they find out that you're undocumented, or you might be forced to pay out-of-state tuition. On top of that, no financial aid, and this could possibly mean you not being able to anymore go to that school or program.
As undocumented folks, you can't really think of anything in long term. There's never really been a sense of stability, and sometimes it's hard to invest yourself because in my mind, I never knew like in 5 years, in a year, in a couple months, where will I be? So it's hard to plan ahead for life, and it's hard to just work towards something.
This morning, Secretary Napolitano announced new actions my administration will take to mend our nation's immigration policy, to make it more fair, more efficient, and more just, specifically for certain young people, sometimes called dreamers. Now, these are young people who study in our schools, they play in our neighborhoods, they're friends with our kids, they pledge allegiance to our flag. They are Americans in their heart, in their minds, in every single way but one, on paper.
So after several years of advocating and pushing for a piece of legislation, 2012 comes around and we finally have a program for undocumented youth.
it gave a lot of undocumented youth a sense of a little more freedom, and it was hope for a lot of us.
This was the first time where we suddenly felt a sense of belonging, like all the hard work was finally about to pay off and maybe lead to an opportunity to access citizenship or a more long-term solution.
DACA happened because of grassroots community. It is undocumented folks themselves who made DACA happen. There's hope because a lot of people are just realizing, and then as we come together, we'll find a way.
White House officials tell ABC News that the president is seriously considering ending a program that provides legal status to hundreds of thousands of undocumented immigrants who came to the United States as children. The move the president is considering would put nearly 800,000 undocumented immigrants in danger of being deported.
In 2017, it's very hard to process how you're able to live here. You grow up in this country with friends, family, with this culture that you're used to, and all of a sudden, the country just doesn't want you.
Knowing that DACA may be repealed, I think, has increased and heightened a lot of people's worries.
If DACA is removed, 800,000 people are going to go back to a life of anxiety, fear, and uncertainty because they could lose their jobs. They might have to withdraw from certain college programs. This could also mean that they are now that much more vulnerable to deportation.
Immigration is a natural occurrence. It is going to happen. And, we have built up from it. We have seen progress in the past. And just because there's a little bit of reclining doesn't mean the progress is going to stop.
Our main goal is to have what we deserve. We've been in this country, we worked hard, we belong here.
In the midst of all this, I think it's important to look around and realize that we have such a big community of advocates and allies that really want to see it succeed. Immigrants always find a way, and where there is no way, we create one. And I believe that that's what's really made us so strong. We need to look to that same resilience to be able to get through what lies ahead. By any means necessary, we're not going to go anywhere, and we just have to make sure the rest of the country gets that message.
Gerardo,
Yes.
because of the video, they blocked the stream, so I'm gonna have to let me see what it looks like. I'm gonna have
Reconnect.
to we're gonna have to join another Zoom, I think.
Because we're showing YouTube